Hello and welcome to Arbil 4x4. I'm Travis and this is Simon, who's a business development manager of Arbil 4x4. And today we'll be talking about the ENstandard Series G2 winch. So first of all, Simon, can you tell us why this Series G2 winch would stand out from other winches on the market?
Yeah, so the Series G2 winch is a follow-on, an engineering progression, if you like, from the original Warn series winches. And the ENstandard is put together by a committee of engineers to a particular standard. And not all winches will meet that standard. They're not required by law to meet that standard. But if you actually do meet that standard, then it is something that a lot of manufacturers of trucks that would fit winches like this, they like to work to those standards. So there are several different elements to it, and the Warn Series G2 ENstandard winch meets all of those criteria.
So can you explain what the ENstandard means and the benefits for its users?
I can. So if you look at the users of winches, so the people who do vehicle builds, things like tow trucks and recovery trucks and so forth, a lot of the manufacturers of those vehicles want to work to a higher standard than just the standard that's written into the law in terms of safety factors. And so with the Series G2 ENstandard winch, it meets those criteria that this committee that produces the ENstandard work to.
So what users or industries would benefit from using an ENstandard Warn winch?
Yeah, so if you look at the manufacturers of recovery trucks, typically the things that would pick up vehicles 3.5 to 5 tons or over, those manufacturers tend to equip the vehicles from start to finish. So everything that a user would want in that recovery truck is already fitted. And the whole recovery truck is built to the ENstandard. So the winches that they use need to comply with that standard as well.
One of the key features of the ENstandard winch is the OLI. So Simon, could you tell us a bit about how the OLI works?
Yes, so the requirement is that the winch has to have an overload protection mechanism built in. And that means that anybody who's operating the winch, if they're going above a certain load, which is higher than the rated load for the winch can detect it and automatically switch itself off. And the way that the Warn OLI works is it actually uses effectively Ohm's law. And it's really working on the electrical field. So the main power cable goes through the hole in the center of the OLI. The electrical field is then detected by the mechanism inside. And as soon as that electrical field is registering beyond a certain value, that means that the resistance is building up inside the motor. That creates heat. That means you've got an overload situation. And then this will automatically send a signal to the contactor on the winch and switch the winch off.
What makes the OLI so important, and what happens when it reaches its pre-programmed limit?
What we need to remember is that the standard itself has safety at its core. So the ENstandard, it's a standard of excellence, but it's actually about safe operation and safe use. So the purpose for the OLI is to make sure that the operator can work within a safe parameter in terms of the actual operation of the winch. So he can't accidentally be focusing on the load that he's trying to pull and not realize that the winch is actually being overloaded. So if he does get to that position, then this actually cuts the winch out as a safety factor.
Apart from the OLI, what other features contribute to the winch's safety and the ENstandard?
So another feature is the e-stop or emergency stop. And this is a device that needs to be fitted close to the winch itself. And this is so that the operator or somebody working with the operator can hit this switch in case of an emergency. So if they see that something is going wrong with the recovery, they can hit this switch and that will automatically cut the power going to the winch. So that's not just switching the winch off from the contactor, it's actually switching the power off that feeds the whole mechanism.
What about the safety controller that comes with the ENstandard winch?
Well, I'm going to show you this. And this is actually the wireless controller. And the wireless controller has, again, to have an emergency stop button. So if you can imagine a winch like this fitted to a larger recovery truck, very often the truck itself is a little bit inaccessible. It's quite high. The winch is on that load bed. So sometimes you need to have a wireless remote because cable is not quite convenient in some instances. When you're using a wireless remote, that wireless remote has to have an emergency stop as part of the standard. That's not a requirement under law, but it is one of the standards that is incorporated into the ENstandard.
Series G2 comes with a specific mount as well. So can you tell us why that mount is essential and how you would install it?
Yeah, so the winch mount is actually designed by our engineering team with 4x4, and it is a development on a mount that we've had in our range for quite a number of years. This now has a reveal at the front that the fair lead is bolted to, and also a series of spacers so that the winch is actually located to the mount at the bottom and at the front, so the whole structure is totally rigid. It also allows for both the 10 and the 12-inch drum variants of the ENstandard winch. So it means that the base plate fits both, and the removal of the little yellow piece that you can see at the front, that blanking plate, when it's removed, allows for the wider fair lead.
How universal is a Series G2 mount? Can it be fit onto anything?
So the winch mount is really optional according to the vehicle build. So some vehicle builders will actually incorporate their own design mount into their build. Others will actually have a location where the winch needs to be mounted, and they will then order the mount along with the winch. It's more for recovery type vehicles than it would ever be used in a domestic situation. Obviously with the ENstandard winch we're talking about commercial use, and we're talking about industrial use. So generally the mount is available for those customers that need it, and it's a very well engineered, robust mount. Other customers may have that already figured out for themselves, in which case they only need the winch, but either way round the standard is still met.
So once the winch is installed, is there any further maintenance needed to ensure that it still complies with the ENstandard?
Not that it complies with the ENstandard. So the standard itself is down to the components that come with the winch, and the winch being made to fit the regulations, and then the vehicle build has been completed according to those regulations. The end user normally will be leasing or buying the vehicle from the manufacturer, and the maintenance of all the equipment on it is then governed by the regulations according to the type of build. So if a vehicle, as an example, has a lift mechanism on it, which most tow trucks of this value have, then they are required to have those tested once a year, and the winching equipment is part of that test.
Is there any changes in the actual rope that's on the winch that make it further comply with the ENstandard?
Yes, there is. So the ENstandard is quite complicated when it comes down to how the rope will fit to the drum. So there has to be enough freeboard left on the flange of the drum after 3 wraps of rope. So in order to achieve that, you obviously you're restricted in terms of the diameter of the rope that you can use. So the rope that's fitted to our ENstandard winches is a compacted rope, which is a more complex construction, but it gives us a higher braking load, and that is how we keep the safety factor. And those ropes are available, so as our customers need to replace the ropes are available from stock.
Does Arbil 4x4 stock these ENstandard winches, and how is that a reflection on the company's commitment to quality?
The answer to it is yes, we do stock them. The winches are in stock in their normal guise, and the EN process is an adaptation. So there's just a difference between the process of picking from the shelf and going to the delivery point, where they go through the ENstandard, where the additions are put in and the correct rope specified and so forth. As far as the commitment is concerned, we are absolutely committed to those sorts of builds with the customers who are working to that standard. And it's quite a complicated standard to meet, and quite a lot of effort has gone into it, but we do understand why that standard exists. And the committee of engineers that comes up with that standard looks at all of the parameters. They look at the safety factors, and then they look at how the improvements can be made in how that's delivered to the end user.
Thank you very much, Simon.
It's been my pleasure.
If you'd like to see more from us at Arbil 4x4, make sure you click like and subscribe to see more of our content. Thank you very much for watching.